Good afternoon, and welcome to today's webinar, How to Decrease the Attack Vectors with Layered Security Modeling, presented by Healthcare Innovation. My name is David Rath. I'm the Senior Editor at Healthcare Innovation. Today's program is sponsored by Extreme Networks, so we want to thank our sponsors and our audience for giving us your time and attention today. Before we get started, we have a few housekeeping details. To submit a question, please use the Q&A box to the left of the video window at any time. You don't have to wait until the end of the program. For technical issues, please press F5 to refresh, and if that doesn't work, you can submit a question with your issue through the Q&A panel. Finally, you can join our webinar discussion on Twitter. You can tweet using the hashtag HILiveWebinar. Also, the presentation is available under the Event Resource tab on the screen. At this time, I'd like to introduce our speakers for today's programs. We have Chuck Long, Matt McNeil, and David McLean of Extreme Networks. And they're going to talk about ways to manage, monitor, and protect your network and devices in real time and ensure patient safety. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Matt.
Dave, thank you. Great to be here and always enjoy our partnership with the Healthcare Innovation Group. Appreciate everybody jumping on today. I know there's lots of webinars and events going on in today's world, but I really appreciate you taking a few minutes with us today to discuss how to decrease the attack vectors with layered security modeling. Again, my name is Matt McNeil. I run our U.S. healthcare teams here in the States. And this is the second of a four-part webinar we're doing with Healthcare Innovation Group. The first one was Healthcare CIO, 5 things to know about networking, and then we'll continue this in December and then again in January. So thanks again for your time, and welcome everyone.
Hey everybody, this is Dave McLean. Thanks for joining. So just a little bit about myself real quick. So I have about 25 years in IT and about 16 specifically in healthcare. I've been with Extreme for over 3 years now, and prior to joining was the Senior Director of Engineering at Ascension Health, where I was responsible for networking and telecom services. As far as my security background, it starts with National Security Agency, what seems like a lifetime ago in the 80s and 90s. And then I continued on as an IT security manager for the city of Indianapolis and then on to healthcare security. And I had a great opportunity to be a global security director for a logistics company where I had both physical and IT security in 22 countries. And then after that, I returned to healthcare. So healthcare is my passion. That's where I'm at. As far as certifications, I was very early adopter of the Certified Information Security Professional. So my cert number was within the first 23,000, I think back in 2001, 2002 timeframe. And then I was in the first 1,600 to complete the International Society of Forensic Computer Examiner certification, where I did work for law enforcement agencies and insurance special investigation units. So that's about me, and thanks for the invite and the opportunity, Matt.
Very welcome.
Welcome, everyone. My name is Chuck Long, and I'm a Principal Systems Engineer for Extreme Networks. I've been in the networking industry for over 25 years, and I've supported and helped many healthcare customers with their networking issues and solutions, both large and small. I've been focused on Fabric Connect technology for the last 8 years, which has really revolutionized the way many of our healthcare customers build and maintain their infrastructure to support the always-on environment that y'all are faced with. We could easily spend an hour just talking about our Fabric solution, but we're only focusing on the security aspects today. With that, I'll hand it back to Matt to review today's agenda.
Thanks, Chuck, and great to have you two on board with us today. So the quick agenda today, obviously we'll go into some of the trends. It's becoming more critical than ever. We'll dive into some of the hyper-segmentation elements and the edge security concerns and kind of wrap it up with some wireless LAN things to think about with WIPs and BLE and IoT security, and then some final thoughts and reference. So thank you again for attending, and just wanted to share a little bit of background on Extreme. Extreme's a global company, as you can see from the map. We have about 2,500 employees worldwide. We have over 3,000 healthcare clients, some of those listed at the top. But what I'm really proud of is our partner ecosystem, partners such as Philips, Hillrom, Draeger, Stanley AeroScout. We work with these folks hand in hand, developing certified solution sets that are going to be critical to 24/7 networks for both acute care, long-term care, and clinical care solution sets. We also look at, obviously, HIPAA compliance, PCI, HIMSS Infran, GDPR, AMI, and all the other applications that kind of fall into for certifications and testings. And really, we built a practice around, healthcare here at Extreme. So we're one of the few manufacturers that has dedicated healthcare teams, healthcare presence, as you heard from Dave and Chuck, a big, extensive background into healthcare that goes into it. And obviously, we want to spend a few minutes about how to improve your security vector standpoint, all right, from that. With that, just kind of painting the scope, I was surprised to see in the news it's the first time for me. The Vermont National Guard was called in to help out with the University of Vermont Health. Their cybersecurity unit is working with them to get their EMR back in place. As you noted here in the last few weeks with some, high-intensity attacks going on into healthcare as a specific vertical has changed. I think we had over a doubling of ransomware attacks last quarter, and this quarter has actually been even worse. In September and October, we've seen, folks like Universal Health Services being down for 21 days. We have the National Guard going into Vermont Health. These things are paramount as far as, getting the attention and help needed, especially it's really hard for me to say, not hard for me to say, but it's hard to see as far as people are attacking these kind of things where patients involved. So we're going to kind of spell through some of the complexities and dangers and ways to limit those things as we go into the segmentation of the network, and share some thoughts that they go into it today.
Hey, Matt, before we move on, with regards to ransomware and healthcare, the healthcare record right now is a primary target for cyber attack. A recent report valued a single healthcare record at $250, while the next most valuable, number 2, was the payment card at $5.40. So you can see where their interest is. And then with the government warning of an imminent attack in the ransomware, it's holding the medical data hostage, and that's going to be a pretty lucrative attack for cyber criminals, and again, as evidenced by the recent government warnings. But that has a significant potential impact to healthcare's organization's ability to deliver services.
Yeah, patient records is by far we've known this for years, but it's been amazing here in the last few, not amazing, but it's been terrible in the last few months, the amount of attacks that are coming to healthcare, that's for sure. Thank you, Dave. So, I think it was a little while ago, but Rob Joyce from NSA actually stated 4 things as absolute primary baseline activities for anyone with a network. And that was 1, limit the system access to important systems. 2 is segment networks and data. 3 is the implement application whitelisting. And then 4, remove hard-coded passcodes. And all of these recommendations are intended to protect internal assets and reducing attack surfaces, and then certainly to contain the breaches. So Rob makes a great point in that segmenting the network is vital to containing a breach incident versus managing through a catastrophe. So your data, your IT systems, and other IT assets need to be evaluated to assign criticality categories and alignment of appropriate protections based on that criticality. So that is your IT inventory, your data inventory, and appropriate classification work that many security groups and programs do today. Yeah, thanks, Dave. And then on top of it, you've got Forrester, you have Gartner. It's not on here, but Gartner in 2016 came out with best practices in network segmentations. They redid it in January of 2018. As you can see, Forrester stating, single business-wide switching fabric. It not only enhances security, folks, but it helps aid in that digital transformation efforts that continues to get one of the top things as far as needs to be budgeted for and move upon. And then, obviously CIO Magazine. So its exposure has been great since 2016, but some of the problems that go into it is, hasn't occurred yet as far as the complexity and the money. So we'll get to that in a minute. But Dave, I thought this was a great thing that we produced about a year ago. I thought you could share a few thoughts of the 5 key things as far as network security requirements that Chris kind of outlined here.
Yeah, I can, but I can't do any justice to any one topic in the time we have. So I'm just gonna hit it at a glance. And honestly, I think this is probably one of the best summaries that I've seen for practical implementation of security. But no, behind each and every item here, there's a complexity, a massive complexity and work behind the scenes for each of these recommendations that can be done. So we don't have time today to go through every one of these, but to point one out, know what is on your network. And in healthcare specifically, that's a challenge, because the infrastructure has to not only serve clinicians providing direct care and facilitate treatment plans, but we also have patient and guest experiences associated with network access that so often is also associated with the satisfaction scores for healthcare delivery organizations. So, we've already mentioned the requirement for segmentation in the network, but with segmentation, it has to be combined with simple administration of the end devices. So our mantra that I've used in the past is simplify, standardize, and consolidate. At the end of the day, undue complexity drives unnecessary expense. With regards to the flow of data, it not only includes limiting access to data, is using data for business functions. So Extreme is focused on the long-term strategy of what we call intelligent healthcare organizations. And Gartner and Deloitte, they call it something different, each one of them, but it really means the same thing. I think Gartner calls it the real-time health system. Deloitte calls it smart hospitals, but they're all the same. And it's really the development of 4 main pillars in healthcare IT. And each of those pillars are supporting the future of automation. So pillar 1 is clinician and patient experience. So all of those self-service portals and interaction points with IT through patient and clinician that drives that overall experience and satisfaction. Number 2 is the external or partner ecosystems, where you may have relationships with outsourced labs, testing, research and development, payment processors, etc. The third is internally delivered IT systems, which are traditionally found in your data centers. So it can include EMRs, EHRs, etc. And then number 4 is the telemetry and monitoring. So the telemetry and monitoring includes things like biomed devices, Internet of Things, remote patient monitoring devices, and et cetera. So anything that generates data, generates telemetry type data. So those are the 4 pillars that become the foundation for the useful data lakes, which are then leveraged for automation and efficiency studies across all aspects of the healthcare delivery organization. That's where the real benefit of managing data and managing data flow comes. So in traditional networks, we're going to talk a little bit more about segmentation, management, administration of a network. Legacy networks have different security mechanisms placed into them. They've been around for 50 years. And over the years, the features and services have been an additive approach so that each additional layer continues to be dependent on the layer below. So security in a legacy network has also been an additive or an overlay approach. And all of that leads to the higher OpEx and CapEx costs to maintain it. And that includes administrative management costs. An example here is the use of firewalls in legacy networks to address security. Firewalls are great devices. They have their role and their place in the network. But the use of firewalls can quickly get out of hand and really start blossoming in numbers within the infrastructure. And they are the most complex network device to manage and also the most expensive. So what do we do if we have 50-year-old data or 50-year-old legacy network designs that we're still using today? And I think it was back in 2011, we, Extreme, brought to market what is called Shores Path Bridging or Fabric Connect, and is ratified by both standards bodies, both the IEEE and IETF. So it is a standard, it is out there, and we have literally thousands of healthcare customers and networks across the U.S., across the globe that's using this technology. But in the legacy network, what's represented on the left, if you hear infrastructure talk about reconvergence, what they mean is the time for all of those layers I mentioned a minute ago and features and protocols to reestablish. So legacy networks will always have that dependency of layers. And the administration of each of those layers is also very complex. And the programming of communication through a network infrastructure is done by one hop, by one hop, by one hop as you look through that diagram on the left. That is ripe for human errors, and when those errors occur or when complexity comes into that environment, it can take down large swaths of the network in a single glance. So contrary, on the right side, what we do and what we look at is in our fabric, we take a service approach. So in a service approach, each item in each network is isolated from the other and cannot be attacked through lateral movement. So we talked about how different devices can actually move through and attach, but we look at this in terms of an infrastructure that is a service delivery mechanism. So in healthcare, we have hundreds of services. So we have video, we have EMRs, we have radiology, PACS systems, services, et cetera. Each of those can be isolated and from each other and then administered at the edge of the network. You're not touching the hop by hop internal to that fabric, and you're not touching the core of your network. So really the message here is we need to focus on the delivery of the service rather than the delivery of an infrastructure.
Hey, Dave, just one more point to add there. You know, another way to look at this is Ethernet was built to be a shared resource. In the legacy world, when we wanted to segregate users or devices, we had to do some heavy lifting with those things called filters or ACLs. When we create a service in the fabric world, it's isolated by default, which is a much better way to propagate that service securely.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for that, Chuck. So when we talk about services, we can also have this thing that we call stealth topology. But to understand stealth topology, you have to understand kind of the network in general, where we're at in the legacy side. And why this is important from a C-level, from a director level, it's being able to maintain secure services throughout the healthcare delivery organization for the reasons we stated earlier. So when cyber criminals attack a network, they go through a set process, including a discovery phase. So they'll get a foothold, and then they'll do discovery, and they'll keep continuing to enumerate throughout the network using well-known scanning techniques, so building a complete network map of the enterprise and the IT assets. So again, in our fabric, each service, and what you see here is a video service, each service is isolated. There is no way out of that service. So even if an endpoint has security vulnerabilities, they're compromised, it is that hacker cannot make lateral movement within the network infrastructure. They will only see a video service, and that is it. So they can't, you know, there was I think it was Sony, you know, it was a great example of a compromise where they came in, they enumerated the entire Sony network, they stole content, they stole movies, they stole a number of different emails, a lot of personal information. Another example is out in Vegas. The casino had its high rollers database compromised via the fish tank in the lobby. That's impossible to do in a services network in a fabric.
One other thing that we do that most other vendors do not is we run hackathons. So we actually invite would-be hackers to come and try to break into the fabric, and no one's cashed a check yet. So just to expand upon what Dave said, you know, fabric attach really allows us to create secure zones within the network. But what about extending that secure zone completely to the access layer automatically? So we have the ability now to automatically extend that secure zone to users and devices based upon authentication. And that could be wired, wireless, or even in the data center for that matter. This automation, it automates the configuration and creates a secure zone that basically goes out and greets the user or device, enables it to securely attach to the network, and when that device or user walks away or disconnects, the service is retracted into the network. So basically we're doing a security construct where we're minimizing the attack surface for would-be hackers. This is a standard. It's being ratified as a standard, so other vendors are actually joining our ecosystem. So we have partners like Telco and Axis from an IP camera perspective that have this auto-attached built into some of their high-end devices, as well as some of our industrial switch friends like Belden Hirschman or MicroSense, Nexans. Actually, even Open vSwitch, which is basically a open source hypervisor, has this technology built into it. And you know, some of the hidden benefits is you never have to label another cable in a wiring closet again. But this allows our network engineers to focus on the more useful task and not on the moves, adds, and change work that kind of rules their day these days. Matt?
Yeah, thanks, Chuck. Yeah, I just want to highlight. So here's some clients, obviously, that have trusted Extreme. I want to highlight OSF, which is a relatively new client to us here in the last 2 years. And I think Colin said it best. You're driving automation, which leads to digital transformation as well. You're minimizing your security and reducing cost. And what OSF actually saw, as Chuck just stated, some of that reduction of time and energy versus our competition was almost 60% OPEX improvements, which is huge. So just want to highlight that. OSF being relatively new to Extreme here in the last 2 years, a great win and transition for their 13 hospitals and clinics and things to move over from a competitor. So and feeling secure with Extreme. So let's transition for a minute, folks. Let's go from the network to the edge of the network, and we've only got, what's the prediction? I think I saw for BLE, there's only 2.4 or 2.1 billion by 2024 of phones, tablets, PCs out there. Dave and Chuck to come get us, right? 75% of what goes into the networks today are coming in via Wi-Fi. We've got telemedicine going on, telehealth that's doubled here this year due to COVID. So a lot of things that are challenging our healthcare clients. And Dave, I'll kind of pass to you to kind of go into some of the specific challenges.
Yeah, thank you. So, kind of referring back to the telemetry pillar that I'd mentioned in real-time health system, that's connected devices and IoT devices. And, when you talk about those medical devices and IoT devices, they enter your network and your infrastructure through a variety of ways, right? So you may have shadow IT groups, you may have, projects or physicians that have gone to a conference and all of a sudden are bringing devices or bringing things back into the network. So in healthcare, we have like hundreds or even thousands of devices attaching to our network every day. So one of the most vulnerable and certainly the highest criticality of the device populations is the medical device. So they usually have little to no embedded security, or over time have become outdated, or may have hard-coded configurations or a slew of other vulnerabilities. So as I mentioned with the shadow group, a lot of times compounding that is the lifecycle management of the devices, right? There's normally that split administration between another shadow IT group, or if it's medical devices, split responsibility with biomed groups, or even a project management or project level group using IoT devices. So the message really is that without that strong processes, this can lead to security oversights, or, hey man, I thought you were doing that, and it becomes an oversight. So the reality for medical devices is that upgrades are nearly impossible to do because most manufacturers aren't wanting to maintain older systems and that recertification process. So they'd rather focus on next gen and next revenue generating opportunities. So we have approached this problem, and it is a significant problem. I've been talking about it even since in 2003, 2004 time period, about management of these medical devices, management of the FDA certification, and that coordination circle that requires IT services, strong processes, coordination with biomed groups, any shadow IT group, and being able to talk and communicate with the manufacturer to be able to provide appropriate security. It can be very, very complex.
So one of the security best practices we mentioned previously is to know exactly who and what is connected to the network infrastructure, which is not an easy task. I always recommend leveraging a network access control solution and creating what we call role-based policies that provide secure access with the visibility of what and who is on your network. These policies can allow access to some systems but restrict it from others, and the policies can remain consistent across wired and wireless infrastructures. So, and they will move along with the device or user as they move around the network infrastructure. You know, with Fabric Connect, we mentioned earlier, users and devices authenticate and can be placed into these secure zones automatically with Fabric attached, which is critical to secure the onslaught of these IoT devices connected or being connected to the network now. You know, the configuration automation of user and access devices, wired or wireless, makes the network team's job much easier and the network much more secure. We also can lock down any ports that are not used, so unauthorized access is not allowed, especially in publicly accessible areas like conference rooms and waiting rooms and things like that.
So what Chuck was describing there was the use of policy, a centralized policy that manages access to the network and access to services and access to data based on who you are or what you are. So, you know, that is one of the benefits of being able to manage a NAC-type solution through the use of Fabric and the automation that can be developed there. One of the things that we also did is called Defender for IoT, where we worked with one of our large healthcare customers for the exact problem and business problem of medical devices. And to give you an example of what I was talking about just a minute ago of those medical devices, and for those that are in healthcare, you absolutely know that the FDA certification, either as a system or a solution, that cannot be modified and has to go back through recertification. And that puts the owner of that device or the healthcare organization that's leveraging that device in a very coarse situation to be able to ensure security. So an example here is that we had this healthcare customer opening a brand new clinic. And in that clinic, they were deploying a brand new X-ray machine. As part of their security methodology, they came through prior to opening and did a security scan, an IT security scan and evaluation of the clinic and becoming ready for business. That X-ray machine, brand new out of the box, came with over 150 vulnerabilities live right out of the box. I believe 98 of them were rated as critical. So that's an example where even brand new equipment being delivered to a healthcare organization has threats and vulnerabilities almost baked into it. And we can talk about the system as a whole and the process and how that certification works and certification of manufacturers do. But at the end of the day, you have to put that X-ray machine into production and into use. So Defender for IoT is a small device that it's a picture just between the X-ray photo and the X-ray machine, that small inline device. It actually create a policy enforcement point to apply policy to either a single device into compute, in this case this X-ray machine, or it can apply it to groups of X-ray machines or groups of blood glucose monitors and readers. So you can actually manage through a centralized policy hundreds or thousands of different devices that have security needs and be able to actually leverage and use that. What that means for an organization is, you know, if you look at legacy devices or older biomed devices or IoT devices, you're extending the ROI for the capital already spent on that device. And you're starting to slow down the refresh cycle of the next revenue generating opportunity for those biomed device manufacturers. In this case, we were able to put that Defender for IoT device in line with the X-ray machine, and in 10 minutes, we brought that X-ray machine up, rescanned it, and it was 0 vulnerabilities on the network. We at no time modified the FDA certified device, the X-ray machine itself. What we did was we just used a centralized policy and a policy enforcement point to be able to take those vulnerabilities off of the network. And this device was configured or built or purposed for third-party networks. It doesn't even have to be an extreme network. We can actually use this device and that infrastructure on top of any existing network today.
And that can be encrypted or not encrypted, Dave. And I guess because, one of the reasons that because it is does support encryption, we can actually extend this service to someone's house, like remote patient care or remote patient monitoring, as well as work from home folks. So basically, we take the same solution, the Defender and the 2 models that we have, like Dave mentioned, the single port model or the multi-port model that has Wi-Fi embedded. So they can take these devices home, plug it in, not have to worry about any configuration. The device basically phones home, creates a tunnel back to the main hospital, and then extends that secure connection out to the patient's home facilities. So again, this solution can be redundant or singly threaded like is shown here, but we have the ability to have redundancy at the head end if needed. Anything else to add there, Dave?
No, I don't believe so. I think we've got the Defender and that policy services that we have well defined.
Yeah. So let's extend it out a little further, right, with Wi-Fi and Bluetooth BLE. So work from home is now going to be a permanent thing, right? A lot of predictions predict 2 days in the office when hopefully we get through this. We know the expansion for telehealth and telemedicine has happened. It's something we've talked about with both payer and provider that needed to progress, and now we're here. Obviously, home health, medical IoT has continued to expand. All those things are coming into play, and if you look to the right, all the types of attacks, rogue APs, masquerade, insertion attacks from man in the middle, all these things come into play. Yes, most providers, I'll call it, of APs, do basic BLE listening, Wi-Fi, WIPs, wireless intrusion protection systems come with it, but we're kind of want you to think about taking it to the next level with dedicated sensors and information. As more and more things are proliferating through Wi-Fi, we need to do a better job of defending how they come in before they can compromise the network as far as those capabilities. Chuck, Dave, anything you'd like to add here as far as Wi-Fi and BLE?
No, I mean, as Wi-Fi continues, it becomes more and more important within healthcare. The security of Wi-Fi, identification of rogue devices, of security breaches within the Wi-Fi environment becomes a critical item for security programs, for security groups, or network infrastructure administrators. So.
And hackers are always looking for the low-hanging fruit, Matt. So, Wi-Fi, IoT devices become that easy target and easy prey for hackers.
Yes, it does.
Which is why we have the industry-leading solution called Air Defense. Air Defense has been around for a long time. In fact, it's been the leading wireless intrusion prevention system for over a decade. But it also provides great Wi-Fi troubleshooting tools when you're not chasing the bad guys out. And again, Matt said most vendors have inbuilt WIPs, wireless intrusion prevention systems, that really only provide a subset of a more advanced system like Air Defense. And that's really for folks that, security is just a checkbox, not where, security is something that's very paramount, like in healthcare. So when good enough isn't good enough, then you really need an advanced Wi-Fi threat protection system in place. we basically have a library of over 250 known threats, which is more than double that of the other solutions on the marketplace today. We have forensic analysis that we collect over 325 statistics per device per minute. So we pretty much see everything happening on the air and then translate that to what comes onto the wire. We have the ability to include rogue AP and client detection and remediation. This is the fun part, where it can actually terminate those rogue APs and rogue clients. Now, if you're in some verticals like, what's the word I'm looking for? Anyway, it's against the law in some places in the U.S. to take down a rogue AP. If you're in hospitality was the word I was looking for. But we have the ability to take that down, which makes some folks excited. In fact, we actually own the patent for that technology. We also have Wi-Fi vulnerability assessments built in, so you can actually remotely test vulnerabilities from the perspective of a Wi-Fi hacker. So you can actually use this system to try to infiltrate your own network, your own wireless network, and will alert you in the event that anything is capable of penetrating your Wi-Fi. Yeah, there's a lot of reporting ability. Go ahead, Matt.
Yeah, sorry. I was just going to say that's a good point. It goes back to those 5 key steps that Dave highlighted at the beginning. You know, number 5 was just that. You've got to have a response plan, but you also need to test the network for those kind of things.
Absolutely, and we also have a plethora of reporting capabilities, which gives us regulatory compliance for things like PCI DSS, HIPAA, SOX, Sarbanes-Oxley. So those are completely included within the system, so you can just generate a report for any of those security aspects. Spectrum analysis is built in. Go ahead.
No, go ahead, Chuck. Sorry.
No, I was just going to say spectrum analysis is built in, and it provides us the ability to monitor and troubleshoot the airwaves for things of interference like microwaves or things like that. So basically, it's a complete spectrum analysis tool that can measure all the air frequency and interference. We also have the ability to provide historical data, so you can actually look back in time. So if a breach did occur a month or so ago and you finally just found it, you can actually go back and replay those events that happened a month, 2 months, 3 months, even a year ago. So we have the capability of looking back at the data in any time frame to analyze for any past threats or anomalies that happened on the network. There are tools for troubleshooting the existing Wi-Fi network, like the live view, which basically gives us the ability to do a real-time packet capture and analysis when someone is having an issue with Wi-Fi. So that's a great tool for that capability. As Matt mentioned, WIPs for Bluetooth low energy is beginning to become more exploited because it's easily exploited. Bluetooth and low energy devices are very inexpensive devices, so not a lot of security went into those devices when they were built. So things like man-in-the-middle attacks can be exploited, and we protect against that. We have the ability to view and identify these DLE threats, provide alarms, which then allow you to locate those threats with triangulation. And really, air defense is the most advanced WIPs available today when security is really of utmost importance to your organization. Anything else to add, Matt?
Yeah, I just want to kind of dive into a little bit like, COVID tracing, right, wayfinding, locationing, asset tags, beacons, all these things that go into watch, listen, inventory, all those things kind of come into play. They have a battery life, and guess what, folks? That battery life is being extended. We were working with Pointer and some other application, asset tracking and different things that goes along in wayfinding, and we're seeing battery life up to 3 years now. So it's becoming more efficient in today's networks, Chuck and Dave. So we just want to note some of those things as you have interest in those things, the more and more things that we open ourselves and expose ourselves to listen for. And that's what Ali Yusuf with Henry Ford, he's been part of a couple panels here lately with us, the new norm here most recently, but at Henry Ford, they really like the positioning of air defense because they have something listening, right? Like Chuck, like you said, there's good and bad, right? There's good to be listening and testing, but also having dedicated sensors that's really sequencing in real time the Wi-Fi traffic for rogues, man-in-the-middle attacks, all those things, BLE, beacons, that they can have not only the knowledge of inventory and where things are at, but also they know it's secure and they know how to lock things down for their thousands of APs across, their extensive hospital network and be successful. So it's really become paramount as part of their security scheme and relevant in today's world, especially from Wi-Fi, work from home, medical IoT, and all the things that go into it. So just quickly here in summary, again, thank you for your time here. We really hope you've got a few things that you can take home with you as far as how to decrease your attack vector in healthcare or any network. We want you to be part of that 25 that's going to get less successful attacks against it. We've seen the rise, like I said before, the ransomware attacks doubled last quarter. We're seeing it going extensively in attacking healthcare this quarter, which is, like I said, just unfortunate, but it is today's world, and we want you to be educated and help with that. And just to mention, as Chuck mentioned again, hey, as far as the network layer, we've continued to offer up hackathons over the years. Since 2011, we have not been penetrated. So we'll just kind of leave it at that as far as the network level. Two things I do want to leave with you as well. There's 2 ebooks posted at Extreme. The links are provided below the picture. One is Top 10 Network Security Best Practices, a great guide. It's about 40 pages or so. It kind of goes into some of the details that we mentioned today. Obviously, the 5 steps is posted as well. It had a link on it as well. And then there's also 12 networking considerations in the post-pandemic era. So just a couple things that you have not been exposed to Extreme before. There is some valuable resources that kind of help ascertain from a general level best practices and things to think about. So I just want to mention that here at the end. So again, thank you. And I think we have a few questions. So let me take a look here.
Yeah.
All right.
Hey, Matt.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Do you want me to queue up the questions for you?
Yeah, that'd be great, Dave. Thank you.
Okay, great. The first one is, how does the Defender solution create the whitelist?
So yeah,
Chuck,
with
you want to
the
answer that
Defender solution, yeah. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Thank you.
Yeah. So with the Defender solution, there's a couple of different ways. One is you can place that device in line to the end device that you want to protect. So you place the Defender in line between the network switch and the device, and you can actually place the Defender into what's called learn mode. And it will sit and learn and watch the traffic that is going back and forth. And then through that, an administrator can review what it has learned and identify what is allowed and what is not. The second method is that we actually have a new partner that we've been working with. Their name is Assimile. And Assimile will recognize devices as devices join the network and create that policy, or allow you to create that policy that upon joining the network, it will push the policy directly to the Defender device, and you can make dynamic changes to it based on device identification. So it goes back to identifying devices that are on your network, identifying criticality, creating those criticality groups, and then the associated policy that's going to be applied or pushed to the protection point.
And there is a third way, Dave. If your staff knows, and has the technology to know what the flow should look like and who it should be speaking to and the IP port it should be talking on, then you can hard code that device as well, or configure that, I should have said.
Great. The next question is, can Extreme Security Solutions work with my existing infrastructure, even if it's non-Extreme networks?
I guess that depends on the solution we talked about. The Defender can be deployed on anyone's network and supports encryption for that matter. Air Defense can be deployed in pretty much any vendor's network that's Wi-Fi related.
Okay.
Yeah,
Campus Fabric can leverage any existing network, right? It's at the end of the day, Campus Fabric is Ethernet and IP, so we integrate with any vendor's Ethernet and IP-based network.
Okay. The last question is just who should they reach out to for more information on the security solutions?
Yeah, you can always hit the webpage. This is Matt McNeil. Feel free to reach out to myself. I'll kind of get us in the right direction, guiding healthcare here. My email is a little different. McNeil is spelled a little different. It's M McNeil, so it's MMCNEEL at extremenetworks.com. So probably the quickest and easy way. And obviously we do have additional resources and personnel that can help improve that security conversation as needed.
Okay. Well, any last thoughts, you guys, before we wrap up?
So I'm going to have a quick summary here. So one of the things that I want to point out is within Extreme, and Matt mentioned it very early on at the beginning, that we have a dedicated healthcare team. Our healthcare practice is focused on long-term healthcare strategies, and that is, and includes what most healthcare organizations follow as the quadruple aim. So our focus is how to improve that patient care, how to treat patients out there in part of population management, how to treat patients out there where they live, where they work, where they play, et cetera, getting away from large brick and mortar facilities and saving those resources for the most critically ill. So being able to facilitate that and partner with an organization to help them reduce costs is what our goal is. So we've talked today about a lot of different point solutions from Extreme. At the end of the day, that doesn't mean anything. At the end of the day, what we want to do and our goal is to provide you the ability to serve healthcare needs, and that is it. So thank you for the time, and hopefully you will look at that and challenge your other vendors to do the same.
Great, thanks, guys. Well, unfortunately, that's all we have time for today, and I want to thank Chuck, Matt, and David once again for today's really in-depth webinar. I want to thank sponsor Extreme Networks for making today's program possible, and I want to thank everyone in the audience for joining us. We hope you'll join us in the future for another healthcare innovation webinar. So that concludes today's presentation. Thanks.